Things that Andy did were part of his art. I think the story itself is a work of art.
For me, one of the ultimate achievements of an artist is to push forward the boundaries of what is considered art and what is not. Andy Warhol did that, and with the pop shop, with his billboards, Keith Haring is doing that.
As his fame grew, Haring welcomed the chance to bring his work to even more places.
Hier de Amerikaan Keith Haring in de cafetaria op de derde verdieping, waar hij aan een muurschildering werkt.
He mounted international exhibitions, which gave him the opportunity to travel and experience other cultures. Primitive art, such as Aboriginal and African art, influenced him deeply. But ultimately, Haring's dynamics and language were uniquely his own.
He's one of the few artists to have really assimilated all the accomplishments of Andy Warhol, to have used what Warhol accomplished and mixed it with his own impulses to create something that in fact was even beyond Warhol. Keith is also someone who's completely assimilated the advances of the conceptual artists, the minimal artists, and other pop artists such as Roy Lichtenstein.
Always versatile, Haring continually investigates new media and new scale. He was commissioned to build various sculptures, such as this huge piece for a children's hospital in Long Island. It was forged in a steel factory in Connecticut and assembled and unveiled at the hospital in the presence of the young patients.
I think it was very nice of whoever made that statue to dedicate it to the hospital. I think that was really nice of him. I think it stands for peace, love. Children can do whatever they want if they try hard enough. And that's all.
I think good public sculpture should function in a way that sort of works with the place where it is, and instead of sort of opposing it or sort of standing out from it, it should sort of function in harmony with the environment that it's placed in and with the community that it's placed in. And a lot of the sculptures even that I've already made were made with attention to the fact that people would sit on them or climb on them or, you know, use them to eat lunch on or to sit underneath to get shade or to, you know, so they could be sort of user-friendly.
Haring deals with the issues of today. In the mid-'80s, the disaster of crack was invading the city. Haring's work spoke to people living on the fringes of society, to children, to minorities. As Haring gained their respect, he felt the responsibility to speak out on the issues that touched their lives.
From a personal experience of a friend that had, you know, gotten involved with crack and wanted to have help and couldn't get help and went to city hospitals, city agencies, kept getting turned away over and over, I became, you know, really personally aware of how drastic the situation was at the time. And the thing that was needed most at that time was really public awareness to prevent other people from getting involved in it.
Life is fresh, yes, you better believe it. A crack is whack, no, you don't need it. Life is fresh, yes, you better believe it. A crack is whack, no, you don't need it.
Even though the social content of Haring's art is very conscious, the process is strictly intuitive.
In Keith's case, the emphasis became the line and not knowing precisely where it was going to. So it was like opening the door to the unconscious. Whether he's drawing a small drawing, for a child, or whether he's doing a major mural the size of a building, whether it's extremely simple with a few lines or tremendously complex, both symmetry and little different information, there is no sketch, there is no preparation. It has to be started and completed completely unprepared.
You're expressing yourself, being whatever parts of yourself that is, whether that is complete accuracy or more humanly making diversions, or not making everything exactly symmetrical, or everything is not going to be exactly balanced 100%, but it will still have that kind of sort of consistency that is as consistent as you are as a person.
Aware of the media attention that Haring's images attracted, in 1986, West Germany's museum at Checkpoint Charlie invited him to make a political statement on the Berlin Wall.
I went to Berlin for about 3 days when I went to do the wall, and unfortunately, as is often the case, it was very cold and almost rainy most of the time I was there. The rain sort of let up around, 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and so I started painting. When I began to paint, the East Germans were peering over the wall all the time. At first they were curious because they saw all the people sort of milling around on the western side and the press and things, so they didn't know exactly what I was going to do. But eventually, after they came out a few times and realized that what I was painting was not really derogatory or was not sort of insulting them in any way, they just decided to let me alone and sort of stayed behind the wall the rest of the time. For me, the Berlin Wall was probably one of the most successful media event things I ever did. The whole reason almost for doing the wall was more for the idea of doing it, and almost as a gesture more than it was to actually paint a wall. I mean, there's a wall that represents the dividing of East and West and this lack of freedom and the conflict that's all over the world. In some ways, although it is as a political act, it has to transcend politics and be a message to people. And it's about unity, no matter in the face of whatever kind of struggle or oppression, there still has to be the power of people.
When it came to volunteer projects, Haring's favorite assignments were the ones that involved children.
In a way, it's as important to maybe communicate to one person, to one 10-year-old person that's growing up, as it is to try to make any big effect on the entire world.
He collaborated with 900 children to create a banner commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Statue of Liberty. The project began with Haring painting the giant 270-foot image, as always with no preliminary sketches or plans.
If I see that something is sort of, the wrong scale or off to the side or something, it can totally change my idea of what I have to do to finish the piece and really make it work and make it work as a piece. So almost every piece is sort of an adventure or is an invention as you go.
Haring spent 3 days with children of every age and social background. He encouraged them to draw their own interpretations of liberty.
I think one of the things that attracted me to working with children the most is their honesty, really, and their degree of courage and just saying and seeing exactly what they feel.
Like Warhol, Haring broke the boundaries between high and low art, and by reaching out to the widest audience, he took the process even further.
The major issue in the art world of the next decade is very likely to be the conflict between those who prefer the traditional old-fashioned art world with a small audience, serious galleries and museums, and then the constituency, which Keith Haring is very much the leader of, wanting to expand art, expand the art impulse into department stores, onto the streets, onto clothes that people wear.
But during the 1980s, the art world moved beyond graffiti art. While dealers looked for something new, Haring seemed increasingly isolated from critical acceptance in the art world.
Keith Haring is one of the few artists who have remained committed to a populism, that he's, as I said, bypassed the art establishment, and rather than being pulled in, he's remained quite an outsider to some extent. Many of his activities are not appropriable by museums and private collectors, so that he's remained a loner.
But Haring is a survivor. At the end of 1988, he presented to the New York City art world his first exhibition at the Tony Shafrazi Gallery in nearly 2 years.
It's wonderful. I think he's as important as Andy Warhol. And I've been a fan of his for many, many years. Andy Warhol and Keith Haring. So I think he's terrific. You know? It's very important, this movement.
I think his stuff is more in tune with the times, and I think people of all ages can kind of relate to it. And then the colors kind of come out, it's got animation and stuff like that, and people like that. It kind of makes you happy. Even if it's a serious message, at least you can still be happy about it, because I think the energy vibrates from his work.
Well, you would think, to look at this respectable, conservative English Dowager Duchess, that I would not like it. But I love it. He has commercialized himself tremendously, but that is the 80s. Commerce, money, yuppidom, all those things are very representative of the 80s. And he has managed, I think, to keep his artistic integrity.
Despite his tremendous success, Haring remains committed to the people.
I mean, one of the things I learned from Andy the most was sort of about generosity and about humility in a way, and sort of just watching Andy dealing with people and the way that he would deal with people that were asking him for autographs or just asking him things. I mean, I think the role of an artist in any society is to be a kind of antagonist, but especially in a conservative society or in a politically oppressive society, which is increasingly more what we're living in all the time.
Keith Haring, a loner in the art world, but not to the rest of the world. Keith Haring, a stubborn optimist about life, about art, about people.
If you love life, if you appreciate life and humans, then you should be against anything that's going against life and against people. I mean, when something is that obviously wrong, you have to be against it. You know, and I think it's partly responsibility, but it's partly just a natural response to seeing something that's wrong and wanting to say something about it or do something about it.